She heard breathing through the baby monitor. She didn't own one. At first it was quiet enough to be mistaken for the apartment settling. The old wood shrinking into itself as the evening cooled. Mira stood in the kitchen, one hand still resting on the counter where she'd been rinsing a glass, listening without meaning to. The sound came again, thin and rhythmic, threaded through a faint hiss like distant static. She turned off the tap. The apartment answered with silence, thick and immediate, as if it had been waiting for permission. The refrigerator hummed. Car passed somewhere below. Nothing else. Then there it was again. A soft inhale dragging slightly at the end. A pause. An exhale that fluttered, almost catching. Mira frowned, wiping her hands on a towel. The sound wasn't coming from the walls. It wasn't plumbing or air vents. It was too close for that, too present, as though it occupied the same air she did. She stepped into the living room. The overhead light was off, replaced by the amber glow of a floor lamp near the couch. Shadows pooled along the baseboards and beneath the low coffee table. The windows reflected the room back at her in dim duplicate, her own figure moving a fraction too slowly in the glass. The breathing came again, clearer now. Not from the room, from something in it. Myra's eyes tracked across the surfaces. Books stacked unevenly on the shelf, her phone charging beside the lamp, the folded blanket at the end of the couch, and then stopped. On the coffee table, near the remote, sat a small white object she did not recognize. It was squat and rectangular, with a rounded speaker grill on one side and a tiny antenna stub angled slightly upward. A baby monitor, the kind she'd seen in stores but never handled, never needed. She hadn't noticed it before. The static bled softly from its speaker, a constant low whisper, and beneath it the breathing. Mira didn't move at first. The room felt altered around the object, as if its presence had rearranged the space in some subtle, unmeasurable way. The light seemed dimmer near it, the air denser. She took a step closer. The breathing grew marginally louder, not in volume but in clarity. She could hear the texture of it now, the faint wetness in the inhale, the slight obstruction at the back of the throat. It wasn't mechanical. It wasn't a loop. It was someone breathing. "Hello?" she said, her voice too quick, too thin. The breathing did not change. She crouched slowly, bringing her face level with the monitor. The plastic casing was matte, unmarked. No brand name. No buttons she could see from this angle except a small dial on the side, turned halfway up. The antenna cast a thin shadow across the table. "Is this someone's?" she asked, softer now, as if the device required quiet. The static shifted slightly, a faint crackle passing through it like wind over dry leaves. The breathing continued, steady, patient. Mira reached out and touched the monitor. It was warm, not hot, not freshly powered, but warm in the way of something that had been held or used. The warmth lingered against her fingertips, unsettling in its intimacy. She pulled her hand back. The breathing hitched, just once. A shallow interruption, like the speaker had swallowed a sound it wasn't meant to carry. Mira froze. "Did you?" she began, then stopped. The silence around the device seemed to tighten, compressing inward. Even the refrigerator's hum felt distant now, pushed to the edges of her awareness. There was only the static and the breathing. Another inhale, longer this time, as if it had noticed her. Mira stood up too quickly, the movement sending a faint tremor through the table. The monitor shifted a fraction of an inch, its base scraping softly against the wood. The breathing responded. It sped up, not dramatically, but enough. The rhythm tightened, breaths coming closer together, shallow and uneven now. The static thickened, a low hiss filling the spaces between each inhale and exhale. Mira backed away. "This isn't mine," she said, louder than before. There's no." Her words felt misplaced, like they belonged to a different conversation. The monitor sat unchanged, its small speaker facing her, the antenna angled like a listening ear. The breathing continued to quicken. Myra's gaze flicked to the front door. It was closed, the deadbolt still in place, the chain hanging slack. She'd locked it when she came in. She always did. No one had come in. No one had left this. She turned back to the monitor. The static pulsed faintly now, rising and falling beneath the breathing. And there was something else, something almost too quiet to notice at first. A second layer, buried beneath the hiss. Faint, intermittent click. Not mechanical, not consistent, like teeth tapping together. Mira swallowed. "Stop," she said. The word sounded small in the room. The breathing did not stop. It deepened. Each inhale now dragged audibly, as though pulling air through something narrow. The exhale lingered, a soft rasp that seemed to brush against the edges of the speaker. Mira felt it in her own throat, an involuntary echo. Her own breathing had changed, matching it without permission. She forced herself to inhale sharply, deliberately, breaking the rhythm. The monitor answered. A delay, half a second, maybe less. Then the breathing shifted to match her. Mira's chest tightened. "No," she whispered. She held her breath. The static filled the space, a low, constant hiss. For a moment, just a moment, the breathing ceased. Then slowly, carefully, an inhale, not hers, measured, controlled, waiting. Mira exhaled in a rush, stumbling back until her shoulder hit the wall. The lamp flickered slightly, the light dipping before stabilizing again. The monitor remained where it was. The breathing resumed its earlier cadence, steady and unhurried, as if nothing had changed. Mira's eyes burned. She hadn't blinked in too long. When she finally did, the room seemed to shift. Not physically, everything was in place, but the angles felt wrong for a split second, the distances slightly off. The coffee table seemed closer, the monitor larger. The antenna pointed directly at her. She blinked again. Normal. Her gaze dropped to the device's side. The dial. She hadn't touched it, but it was turned all the way up. The static surged, filling the room with a dense, almost tactile noise. The breathing cut through it, louder now, layered, as if overlapping with itself. And beneath it, another sound, faint, a voice, not words, not yet, just the shape of them forming and dissolving in the static. Mira stepped forward despite herself, drawn by the need to hear it clearly, to understand. The voice sharpened, a whisper, her name, Mira. It was almost lost in the noise, but unmistakable. She stopped. The breathing faltered, then resumed, slower now, heavier. "Mira." The voice came again, clearer this time. It wasn't distorted. It wasn't distant. It sounded close, familiar, too familiar, like something remembered rather than heard. Mira's stomach dropped. There was a quality to it she recognized, not the tone, not the pitch, but the cadence. The way the syllables stretched slightly at the end. A memory surfaced, unbidden. Late nights in a different apartment. Thin walls. The sound of someone on the other side, pacing, talking to themselves in low murmurs that slipped through the plaster. A voice she'd learned to ignore, until the night it stopped. Mira's gaze snapped back to the monitor. The static swelled, then dipped, like a breath of its own. The voice threaded through it again, closer now, almost clear enough to touch. "Mira, I can't." The words cut off abruptly, swallowed by a sharp burst of interference. The breathing surged, frantic for a second before settling back into its steady rhythm. Mira took another step back. "No," she said again, shaking her head. "No, that's not." He moved. He left. The monitor remained silent except for the breathing. Then, a new sound. A faint creak. Not from the speaker. From behind her. Mira turned slowly. The hallway stretched away, dim and narrow, the bedroom door at the end slightly ajar. The darkness beyond it felt deeper than it should, thick and unlit. The creak came again. A floorboard. Inside the bedroom. Mira's pulse pounded in her ears, drowning out everything else for a moment. When it faded, the breathing was still there. But it was no longer coming only from the monitor. It was in the hallway now. Soft, close, matching the rhythm exactly. Mira stood frozen, her back to the wall, eyes fixed on the open door. The monitor crackled behind her. "Mira?" The voice whispered, clearer than before, almost gentle. "I found it." The kitchen clock ticked backward when she entered the room. At first, Lila thought it was a hesitation in the air, one of those small, untraceable pauses that sometimes happened when a space settled into itself. The apartment had a quiet rhythm at night. The refrigerator's low hum, the soft expansion of pipes behind the walls, the distant wash of traffic filtering through the glass. Each sound layered gently over the others, familiar enough to ignore. This didn't belong. She stood in the doorway with her fingers still on the switch. The overhead bulb buzzed faintly as it warmed, spreading a thin, yellowed light across the kitchen. It dulled everything, the counters, the tiled floor, the narrow table pressed too close to the wall. Even the shadows felt flattened, pooled low along the baseboards. Tick, a pause. Tick, not forward. Her eyes lifted slowly to the clock above the stove. It was a plain, white thing with black numerals and narrow hands. She had owned it for years without ever really seeing it. It had always moved with quiet certainty, marking time in even, forgettable increments. Now the second hand jumped. Backward. Tick. It settled into place as if it had always belonged there. Then again. Tick. Lila frowned and stepped inside. The air felt thinner in the kitchen, not colder exactly, but lacking something she couldn't name. Her breath came a little shorter, a little quieter. "That's not right," she said, though her voice sounded misplaced, as if it had entered the room too late. The clock continued. Tick, tick. Each movement was precise. No jitter, no resistance. It wasn't broken. It was deliberate. She moved closer, her socks whispering faintly against the tile. The distance seemed to stretch slightly with each step, the table and counter pulling just far enough away to make her hesitate mid-stride. Tick, tick. The sound grew clearer, sharper. It seemed to land somewhere inside her chest rather than in the room itself. Lila stopped beneath the clock. The minute hand trembled, then shifted, backward. A fraction, but enough. Her stomach tightened. "No," she murmured. The refrigerator's hum cut out abruptly, leaving a silence that felt structured, almost intentional. It didn't empty the room. It filled it, pressing against her ears, amplifying the ticking until it dominated everything. Tick, tick. Lila reached up and touched the clock's plastic frame. It was cool, smooth, faintly dusty beneath her fingers. The ticking stopped. The second hand froze mid-motion. The room followed, holding itself in suspension. Lila exhaled, a small release she hadn't realized she was holding. "Okay," she said quietly. She pressed her thumb against the glass. The clock jumped. Tick, forward, just once. Relief flickered, thin, uncertain. Then, tick, back. The motion resumed as if the interruption had never occurred. Lila pulled her hand away. The silence shifted again, tightening around the sound. The outside world receded, leaving only the kitchen and the clock's steady retreat. Tick, tick. Her gaze dropped to the table. A glass sat near the edge, a faint ring beneath it marking where condensation had pooled and dried. She stared at it, trying to recall placing it there. She couldn't. The clock ticked again. The minute hand slipped back another notch. Lila stepped toward the table, slower now. The air thickened as she moved, pressing faintly against her skin. Each step felt fractionally delayed, as if her body were arriving a moment after her intention. She touched the glass. It was warm, not room temperature, warmer, like it had just been held. Her fingers tightened around it. A flicker crossed her mind, an image without edges. Sitting here, the glass in her hand. Someone across from her, their outline blurred by light she couldn't quite place. She blinked. The image dissolved. Tick, tick. The sound deepened, layering over itself in a way she couldn't quite follow. It felt less like a sequence and more like something folding inward. Lila set the glass down carefully, aligning it with the ring. The faucet dripped. A single drop fell into the sink with a hollow, metallic note. Then, another, but it hesitated. The drop clung to the lip of the faucet longer than it should have, stretching thin before drawing upward, retreating into the metal as if pulled back by an unseen thread. Lila stared. "No," she whispered. The word felt automatic, stripped of meaning. Tick, tick. The minute hand moved again. Something shifted in her chest. A subtle dislocation, like a memory slipping free of its place. She reached for it instinctively, but it slid further away the more she focused. Her eyes moved to the wall beside the refrigerator. There had been something there. A note. She knew it. She could almost see the outline. Tape curling at the edges, handwriting pressed too hard into paper. But the wall was bare. Tick, tick. Her thoughts lagged behind her senses now. She became aware of herself in fragments. Her breathing, her hands, the pressure of the floor beneath her feet, each slightly out of sync. She stepped back. The doorway seemed farther than before. Too far. She stopped, disoriented. Tick, tick. A memory surfaced, sharper this time. The same kitchen, but warmer, brighter. A voice she couldn't fully hear. "Just turn it back," it said. Her own voice answered, thin with hesitation. "I don't want to forget." Tick, tick. The minute hand slipped further away. The memory fractured. Laughter brief, uncertain. The scrape of a chair. The clink of glass. Then nothing. Gone. Lila pressed her palm to her forehead. "What did I?" she started, but the question unraveled before it finished. The room felt smaller now. The ceiling lower. The light dimmed, its buzz softening into an uneven flicker. Tick, tick. The spacing stretched. Each sound took longer to arrive, the silence between them thickening into something heavy. Lila turned back to the clock. The hour hand had shifted. The time it showed. She recognized it. Not vaguely, not as a possibility. Exactly. Her breath caught. No. The air cooled further. Her exhale fogged faintly before vanishing. Tick, tick. She stepped toward the doorway. The floor seemed to compress and expand beneath her, distance behaving inconsistently. The frame wavered at the edge of her vision, narrowing, then pulling away. She reached for it. Her hand met empty space. It had moved. Tick, tick. Behind her, the clock continued. Lila turned. The table was different. The glass was gone. The chair pushed in. The faint ring erased. Her pulse surged. Tick, tick. The kitchen tightened around her. Every surface matte and drained of warmth. The silence swallowed the small sounds of her movement, leaving only the slow, deliberate ticking. She tried to hold onto something, any sequence, any proof of order, but each thought slipped backward, unraveling as soon as she touched it. Tick, tick. The clock's hands crept closer to the moment she knew. The one she had changed. Just a minute, just enough. Her chest tightened. "I didn't," she began, but the words felt wrong, detached. The air held itself still. Tick. The clock reached it. Everything stopped. No hum, no drip, no breath, only the stillness. Lila stood at the center of it, suspended, the shape of the room pressing inward. Then, tick, the second hand moved again, backward, and the silence shifted with it, as if something unseen had taken a step closer, aligning itself precisely where she was about to be.